Welcome to Shadow Empire Academy. Today we'll discuss administrative strain. To find it, you should open Zone tab and click the second button in first row. Here on the left we can see that administrative strain for our zone is 17%. In the tooltip we can read that the higher it is, the less efficient your management of the zone will be. So what does it mean? As you know, our governor can influence production in assets of this zone. So for example, our recycling facility produce metal, oil, rare metals. When we double click on the asset, we can see in the log that the governor modified metal production by 13%. It could be higher, but because of the administrative strain penalty, minus 10%. Why not 17%? Let's check. The administrative strain penalty is 17%, but it affects only by our production by 10%. It's because we have some steps, gradual steps. If your strain is below 10%, it doesn't affect you at all. If it's higher than 10%, we have minus 10% modifier. If it will be higher than 20%, we have minus 20%, and so on. 87, it will be minus 80. Okay, so from where this 17% comes from? Our governor can effectively manage assets within 6 hex range. So we count from the center of the zone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is the distance that in any direction that our governor can effectively manage without any penalty. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This asset will not count towards administrative strain. But any asset that is above 6 hex range will negatively impact our administrative strain. So here we can see that we have supply base level 1. How far it is from our center of the zone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 hexes away. Do we have any other asset? No, this is the only asset that we have far away from our city zone, and that's why we have 17%. To quickly check and verify how our administration strain looks like across different zones, we can use the third button on the left, and on the bottom we can click our middle button to see current zone administration strain, and thanks to this third button we can easily scroll through all zones that we have, and we can check what's the administration strain there. For example, this is our zone that we are talking about, 17%. Then most of the zone have 0, but this one has 1%, and here we can see 63%. So that is something serious, and we should address this issue. What's the problem here? The problem is that, as you can see, there is a long road with rails ending here. And what we have here? We have here 3 assets. They're public and are far, far away from this zone city center. So those 3 assets increase a lot the administration strain. How we can fix that problem? It's important to understand that the game counts only working and active assets and the percentage of their efficiency. So if I decrease the airbase production to 50%, this asset will count only as half. If I will temporarily disable this asset, it will not count at all to the administration strain. So this is the simplest way how we can control administration strain, by reducing the production or by simply disabling temporaries on assets, and it will decrease the administration strain. The other idea is to change the border and move this hex to the zone here. The zone has only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hexes away from this area, so I could simply right click, switch to zone borders mode, and reassign those hexes to the deep cone zone. This way, those assets will no longer count to this far away gigacon zone, but they will be included as part of this zone. So it's very good way of dealing with the administration strain. And the last thing which is important is that the game compares weight of all assets that we have in zone center. So if we have very big zone with many assets, even some assets that are far away will have less impact, as in the example of zone that is smaller, like this one. Here we have only 2 assets, 4 assets. So if I would have another 4 assets outside, then I would have 100% of administration strain. But if here I would have 4 assets and here I would have 20, then that would be not so impactful. So it's always matter of the proportion of weight of all assets within 6 hex range to everything else. So big zones are less impacted by some small assets here and there, like this one. This one, this is mine level 2, so we count it as 1 because it's private asset. But here we have big zone, so there is no big impact on this zone by this asset, and it's 4% of administration strain. But yeah, it could be much higher if we would have less assets nearby. Another option to deal with administration strain is to create new zone. For example, this asset, instead of increasing our administration strain, can be converted to a new zone. So here we have a button to create new zones, but it will work only when we have an asset. So there are 2 ways to create new zone: on existing asset like a mine or any other production asset, or we can create our own asset using the construction panel. Usually I recommend to create track station to cover nearby assets as a new zone, but in this case we can simply create small zone, maybe make it a little bit bigger. Of course, the problem with new zone is that you need to assign governor and deal with workers and happiness. So it's, I would say, the last effective one, but it might be worth it when you have situation like here, when we have few interesting assets, some ruins, and that's why I created here a new zone on that field, because here we have also metal, ruins, so it was a good candidate for a new zone. Otherwise, those all assets would increase a lot administrative strain here. So here I created new zone, assigned that governor. Also, I did the same here to cover some assets, but here it was not worth it. So as long as you keep administrative strain below 10%, it's fine. Thank you very much, and I hope you could learn something from me.